Yeah, I'm probably outing myself as having been incredibly naive, but I didn't realize that I needed to be able to do my job really, really well and also manage my career. And
Mhm.
not just not just know how to answer 16 conversations a minute, I mean an hour, a minute, or like not just really deeply understand the product, but be able to talk about that and be my own hype person in order to get promotions and get other jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, it's sort of like, spinning all the plates at the same time, right? I think a lot of folks focus on the skill of their job and
Mhm.
not the skill of jobs, the skill of career.
And that's so many
Um,
different components. That's understanding politics, that's understanding how companies work. It's understanding the positioning of the company that you're in and whether the company that you're currently working for is thriving or not thriving. Like there's
mhm.
so much that goes into managing your career.
Hello, and welcome to the CX Files. Today's guest is Jen Weaver. She's a customer success manager at OnRamp, where she's been in customer support and success for SaaS businesses for over 10 years. She joined YNAB, You Need a Budget, as the second support hire and left when there were more than 70. She was at Tetra for 2 years, including a pivot from customer success to marketing, where she created content for customer leaders. Personally, she enjoys board games and could play the game Dice Kingdoms of Valeria endlessly. Jen, thanks for joining.
Oh, for sure. If you've played Dice Kingdoms, you probably know how habit forming it can be.
I have to add that to my list. I enjoy a good board game. So Jen, I always like to start with a little bit of history and start with the past of my guests, especially the early experiences in their career. So for you, is there something that really stood out to you when you were just getting into customer support, just getting into CX that really was just caught you off guard or was a surprisingly hard thing to deal with?
Yeah, I'm probably outing myself as having been incredibly naive, but I didn't realize that I needed to be able to do my job really, really well and also manage my career. And
Mhm.
not just not just know how to answer 16 conversations a minute, I mean an hour, a minute, or like not just really deeply understand the product, but be able to talk about that and be my own hype person in order to get promotions and get other jobs.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, right? I mean it's sort of like, spinning all the plates at the same time, right? I think a lot of folks focus on the skill of their job and
Mhm.
not the skill of jobs, the skill of career.
And that's so many
Um,
different components. That's understanding politics, that's understanding how companies work. It's understanding the positioning of the company that you're in and whether the company that you're currently working for is thriving or not thriving. Like there's
mhm,
so much that goes into managing your career.
absolutely. Was there, like, digging into that a little bit, are there any resources or voices or sources that sort of helped you to get a better perspective on career stuff?
Yes, I really enjoyed the CSM school at Pavilion. I feel like I say that all the time. I'm not currently a member of Pavilion, but I joined for that class. I took it twice actually. It was really, really helpful in terms of moving from support to success, but also just kind of understanding the bigger picture. I'm continually inspired by Sarah Caminiti, who we we're best buds now, but I've just followed her content and she has a really good podcast coming out next year about being a woman in customer work and managing your career, which I got a preview of. So that was really inspiring to me. It's not available yet, but it will be. And I think the support driven community helped me a ton going to the events and then also being a part of the Slack community.
Great. Yeah, I mean, Sarah has been a resource for me personally and just a great person all around. So I'm really excited. Shout out to Sarah Caminiti. Her, I believe it's called The Career Strategist.
She has the Career
Um,
Strategist and also Epical Growth. But Career Strategist is the
right.
the podcast that I got the preview of. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's going to be good. One of the themes that you've touched on in your career and already on the show so far is this transition from support to success. Um, when you when you think about that, was there something that stood out to you as sort of the motivation for that? And then, how did that go in the early days?
Question. Thinking about how to formulate my answer here. I think for me, it was two things. One, I knew I wanted to level up and I didn't quite know where or really care. Like I didn't know enough about any field to care which one I was going to level up into, but I wanted to move upward. I was a single mom. I needed to make more money. That's one big reason. I was behind. I had been a stay-at-home mom and I had not really invested in my career. And so I was behind in earning power in my life and I really wanted to accelerate that. And second, there was an opening, right? So I thought I might go into product management. I thought I might look into UX design. And it happened that at YNAB there was an opening for me to move into a role that was basically a customer success manager. And so I just took it. I was like, okay, well, I am pretty capable and I could do a lot of things. And here's this opportunity. So, like a lot of things, it sort of was luck and opportunity that came along.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I'll raise my hand and say I was raised by a single mom,
Mm.
and so you know, I can relate to that the difficulty of that experience, not directly, but being around it, and and also just this idea of support is a starting point for so many careers. For some people, they stay in support, but a lot of people start in support and then they do want more earning power. They want more, what's the word? More agency over their day-to-day work and more influence. But oftentimes it's hard to make that transition. And sometimes you need to get lucky, but also to position yourself and do some of those career things. Yeah, I guess where I'm going with this is, this idea of, support is kind of a battleground. It's a difficult place to exist. I mean, of course, customers coming in frustrated, but also the pressure for management. When you think about like those earlier years of your career in support, like um, were there some things that sort of helped you or made it better?
I think I had some really fantastic managers along the way and teams. So everybody on the YNAB support team was so supportive, and it was such a great place to grow. I Early in my career, I used Help Scout, and I used a lot of their resources to learn how to be a support specialist. And and it was pretty cool, to get to move into podcasting during 2025 and kind of be adjacent to Matt Patterson, who I had learned a lot from his blog and podcast with Help Scout. So the team and Help Scout, and again, support driven. I think the first time I went to a support driven conference, I was a baby support specialist, and it just kind of opened up my brain to. I think I was still part time maybe at the time, and just was like, oh, there are all these people in Portland with purple hair, like who just like live lives and support is their whole thing and it's a career. And I think that
Mhm.
opened my eyes to support as a career. And I think it would have in some ways success and support are blurred and they're the line. I do a good amount of support in my customer success role right now. But I do think support could have I'd be happy being a support specialist the rest of my life. Like I loved it. I loved it at YNAB. I loved getting to answer. I loved like self-righteously knowing the answer and getting to deliver it to people, and I love the technical and aspect of learning more and more and more about the product and how it's built. I
Mhm.
wish that it could be a career path. It seems kind of arbitrary to me how we decide which roles we pay more money than others. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that there is a lot of inertia, bad inertia in the structure of organizations and in job titles and roles.
Mhm.
And definitely the legacy view of support is that it's sort of the end of the road for the customer, and it's the lower priority department in the business, right? Sales gets a lot of attention, marketing gets a lot of attention, product development gets a lot of attention, and then there's support, right? And I think we know that is a huge mistake, and people regularly underestimate the impact the support has on revenue and these dollar signs that businesses love and care about, right?
Hard to draw that
Um,
connection. It's hard to draw a straight line like you can with sales, where an
right.
SDR executes a sale and however much money comes in, it's way different with support.
Yeah, and I think it takes a certain type of leadership. It takes a certain amount of vision to understand that, you know, just because you can't track something dollar for dollar does not mean that it lacks impact.
Mm.
Um, and there's various ways you can take it. It's my opinion that more and more support's impact can be quantified, and should be. And I think that's a big opportunity for people as well. So I want to move a little bit into the present and talk a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the things you're working on right now, or thinking about right now. Like what are some of the things you're thinking around, data and metrics and sort of tracking stuff?
Oh, good question. I when you asked that question before you got to the part about data and metrics, I had an answer, but I don't work with metrics a ton in my role. I was going to say this morning I was wrestling with my team with I wasn't wrestling with my team. With my team, I was wrestling with the idea of what is the line between success and support. I know, so for example, if a customer emails me as their CSM three bugs that or things they think are bugs, and in order to escalate that, I really want to use my intercom integration with
Hmm.
Jira. And I want to that,
Hmm.
send that to Jira and then it'll keep me updated and I'll keep the customer updated. If it's in my Gmail, that's never going to happen. So I know that's the line. But we had some different opinions about should customer success managers just do the support work, or should at what size company do you spin out support as its separate function? And it depends on whether you're B2B, whether you're B2C. There's no one answer. I would love for you to find somebody to answer that question and do a podcast with them.
Well, I've
Um,
got some opinions. I mean, I can't say I'm, uh, that I know everything in this topic, but it certainly seems like, all the tier one stuff, almost all the tier one needs of support, um, are getting handled by AI these days.
mm,
And if you're only left with tier two and three contacts, that's really approaching customer success at that point. And so I think whether you're in a B2B business or B2C business, um, that's the trend.
yeah.
And I don't think it's going anywhere. And so, even if you sell, you know, multi-million dollar contract B2B software, or if you sell, toothpaste, the same thing is true. And of course, the specifics are going to look different, and you're going to have sort of different levels of self-service versus hands-on and account relationship and that sort of thing. But that's the trend that I see. What do you think?
Makes total sense. And it resonates with my direct experience because Finn in Intercom does take everything that can be answered with the knowledge base and often a little bit more. I think there's another level kind of beyond tier 2 and tier 3 support, which is strategic. So as a CSM, I'm helping my customer think through what is your strategy for using this tool, being proactive. Who on your team are you going to bring in to use OnRamp? What are your goals? So I'm your CSM and my goal is to get you success with our product. That hopefully looks like you can like a line on a resume, right? Like you as my customer, my point of contact, leveraged on-ramp to move the needle from X percent to X percent, like getting you one of those number-based resume lines, which is then good for me to demonstrate that my product had value for your company. So I'm trying to find those win-win situations that motivate my customer to work more with our tool, right? So that's where I think that's really customer success, right? And also we do those tier 2 and tier 3, like when we're in a call and before we can get to that strategic conversation, the customer has these questions about their day-to-day life in the tool. We need to cover those. I think we want to push toward more percentage of our conversation being that strategic, long-term, goal-oriented conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you think about, I know you've mentioned a few, you've mentioned Help Scout, you've mentioned Intercom. When you think about the landscape of tools out there, obviously, this AI wave is massive. What are some of the the hidden gotchas or like the surprises when it comes to getting AI results?
One this morning, uh, and I felt kind of dumb about it, but it's long been my habit as a CSM when I get a support question in my Gmail inbox from a customer to forward it to my support email, right? And then that goes into Intercom, and then I can answer it there. Even if I'm answering it there, that helps
Hmm.
me track my support metrics. It allows me to, like I said, have use Jira or Slack integrations that I have set up. But and I did that today. And then when I went over to Intercom to look at it, Finn had given an answer that was not helpful because it's out of context, right? Like I've already had this conversation. It's trying to use this forwarded email. And that was a gotcha. That was a surprise and then I apologized to the customer. I was like, I'm so sorry. I told you I was going to send this over and I didn't realize this AI bot was going to hop in inappropriately.
Hmm.
And that was kind of a
Hmm.
bummer. I think there's probably a way to turn that off for forwarded because I think that's a key part of my workflow is forwarding on those support emails.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, you know, there's this dream of having everything like perfectly integrated. Um, and a lot of tools out there, they'll say, okay, we integrate with this, that, and the other thing. But unless that is gotten all the kinks worked out, like it can create more problems sometimes.
Mhm.
How do you sort of think about like, I don't know, the tool stack, the set of things in front of you and how to make the right decisions there?
I think it's crucial for me to talk to other people who've actually used or even rejected the tool, like people who've been through the process of testing them out. You
Mhm.
just can't get more and more, it's just nearly impossible to get actual information from a sales process, unless you really go into the process and you have meetings and who has time for that, right? I like to post in support driven and say, hey, who has information about this tool and see if I can just get on a call with somebody.
Yeah, a peer, right?
Mhm.
Not a salesperson.
Yeah.
I think that's a great tip for people, and shout out again to the I guess to the support driven Slack community. It's a
Mhm.
great group of
Yeah.
people out there.
Yeah. It makes me
Um,
really appreciate the salespeople on my team because a good part of my work is looking back over sales calls that they've had to
mhm,
understand what my incoming customer is thinking and working toward. And
mhm.
I'm genuinely amazed with how many times they give genuinely good information to customers during the sales process and set them up so they can try out the product. That's huge for me. I was never given the chance to do that when I was testing out, tools. So it makes me realize how great that sales team at OnRamp is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, this idea of if I put it together, what you're saying here. So, one is you want to ask your peers and hear their story directly.
Mm,
The other one is you want to try the
I
tool
do.
yourself
Yeah. I want
directly,
to know
right?
what's going on with it and what's going to happen when I do all the crazy things I want to do with it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, try before you buy, and also just, a trusted voice you can ask, I think is great. So for people out there, those are some things to think about next time you have a conversation with a vendor. I want to switch gears a little bit here and think about, I want to ask your thoughts about this knowledge piece. And this is a theme that I keep coming back to because it seems more and more that whether you're talking about AI or you're talking about onboarding or training, it always comes back to the documentation. It always comes back to the knowledge base. And yet it just doesn't seem to get as much attention as it should. What do you think about, knowledge management?
I think I have a good amount of experience working with customers with this because Tetra is a knowledge management tool, and I was there for 2.5 years. And I worked with a lot of customers implementing knowledge management. And it, like many things, it works almost universally, works best when it's part of somebody's job description. Doesn't have to be a whole person, doesn't have to be a whole 40 hours a week, but the buck has to stop with somebody who, and I think at a smaller company, it can be internal and external knowledge. So somebody who owns the process of product enablement. So product releases come out and they make sure that that person maybe doesn't write everything, but makes sure that that process goes smoothly. And internally, the team knows what the product release is. And another thing I think OnRamp does really well. And then also, why not have that person at a small team make sure that the help docs that go out to the customer are also updated? And I think at a larger company, I think when you get to 30, 40 people, knowledge management should be a large part of somebody's role, if not a title. And I think that can scale pretty well. I think you can have one person up to maybe a team, and it depends. So much depends. Like take this with a grain of salt, but up to a team size of maybe 80, 100, you can have one or maybe two knowledge people. But those teams that have that many people and no one's job is knowledge, it's a mess.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there absolutely should be somebody on every team that has part of their job description, which is the knowledge piece, in my
That
opinion.
makes sense. Yeah.
Um, but I also think, you know, I should say instead of what I think, what do you think? Do you think that everybody should have some some interaction with updating and adding knowledge?
That's a good question. That's definitely how we built Tetra on the premise that, of course, your knowledge tool will have different user types, and some people will be view only. And I think there's something to be
Hmm.
said for a probationary period before you let people do that. But it, it's the same problem you run into when you send an email to 6 different people asking for something. Everyone thinks the other person is going to do it, and it never gets answered, right? It's great to have, like the Dylan, who's an amazing ops person, technical specialist, everything person on our team, has set up a great flow, which I like, which is a Slack channel. So anytime there's documentation that needs to be created, one of us goes in and it sends it straight to him, and he makes sure that if he doesn't write it, he's at least getting it done. There needs to be a person driving it past the finish line, and all the better if that person delegates some of that work. But if there's nobody doing that, if it's just well, everybody is in charge of the documentation, then you have a Notion space with an infinite amount of stuff that just who knows if it's accurate. And then nobody can trust anything, and then you're back to a state where basically you might as well not have anything because everyone's just asking each other in meetings, how do you do this thing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, a good heads up, for people out there. I think some of us have experienced what you're talking
Oh,
about
all of us, I'm
before.
sure. It's such a difficult issue. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's valuable to fix it, right? And it's valuable to do it right,
Mhm.
and everything is elevated when you do it right. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the lifeblood,
Yeah,
right?
and you
It
could get
affects
away with it
everything.
before AI.
Right. That's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. It how can I say? It increases the importance, right? It turns the volume up on any little discrepancy or out of date article or
Mhm.
confusing duplicate.
Mhm. Yeah. Because if I have a specialist who looks at an article and goes, "This is a little confusing," or "This might be out of date," they're gonna reach out in Slack to a team member, but AI is just going to go, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, sure, let's tell all the customers this.
Yeah, my brother is a software engineer, and I do a little bit of coding on the side as sort of a hobby. But um, there's this joke going around that like the AI keeps telling you you're absolutely right, and so just whatever you've typed in, you send like some frustrating message like you're not getting it. Like here's the thing you're missing. It just keeps coming back with you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I did not calculate that correctly. Like, let's do it again. It's just,
Right. And I mean, but I think these are like the growing pains, right? I think it's still early days in general, and depending on the organization, you might be, um, ahead or behind, so to speak, with AI adoption. But we're all just kind of figuring it out. And anybody who says they're an AI expert, it's like, okay, you are as new to this as all of us. It's only been a few years in the recent wave, so. Um, I think there's a lot of little gotchas and little things that people need to learn. Knowledge management, I keep harping on, is the foundation, and just like you cannot get away from that. There's the integrations, there's the, sort of how do you set up your tools to work together, but the process piece as well. And that's what I wanted to ask you about is like, how do you think about process and improvement?
in relation to AI, do you mean?
In relation to, those daily patterns, including AI tools, but also the human side, like,
Mm,
do you look at process and reevaluate? Do you have like a specific method that you use to approach
mm.
adding a process or improving a process?
That's an excellent question. I was just thinking about that today, actually. You're asking such topical questions. I think, I mean, I'll say this, I think team buy-in is the most crucial element. So I wish I had an acronym that's like you do, K and then F and then P or whatever, but I just, and maybe I'll look into that actually. But I think you can implement a process in a silo all you want, but figuring out what's going to motivate your team to be interested in that process and invested in it, whether that's they get a Loom video explaining what the new process is, or they get to be in the planning meeting that chooses the process, or I think, and it's very individual. Some people will just adopt something completely hands off and not have to be involved, and some people need to ask why 8 times, right? So I think it's knowing your team and because it doesn't matter what you do, you can buy the fanciest tool and implement it if it comes as a complete surprise to your team and they're just not ready or interested in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I keep coming back to this idea again of like go where people are and add to what they're doing.
Mm.
Don't don't say come over here and do this new thing,
Mm.
right? Like, "Oh, I noticed that you do this every day. Here's a little piece you can add to what you're
Yeah.
doing
That's
already."
why so
That's a
many
very
tools
different,
have Slack
you know
integrations, I think. We're already all in
Right, well,
Slack or Microsoft
yeah,
Teams if you're unfortunate.
one of the and I talk about video games for a second, but one of the things that's interesting, if anybody out there plays video games on computer, there's a platform for games called Steam, and Steam will log the number of hours that you've spent playing a game. And so I've got like some scary number of hours on certain games that I've played for many years. But I would love to see the same thing for Slack and for various tools. Like, oh, you spent 3,000 hours in
I don't
Slack
know if
this
I
year
want to
or something,
know.
right?
I don't. Funny story about Steam. YNAB, before it was a software as a service, was sold on Steam. So I had customers
Wow.
write in and say that they knew exactly how many hours they had spent on YNAB in Steam because there was some deal where you could buy it for $12 or something once a year.
Interesting. Yeah, but this idea of like I don't know, doing some accounting with time I think is an interesting point as well. Just personally, like I'm kind of
Oh my
curious, like,
gosh, me too.
you
I
know.
use a tool called Sunsama, and
Okay.
I have categories for all my work so I can look back and see
Mhm.
how much I'm particularly interested right now in how much of my work is proactive versus reactive. So reactive work would be in customer meetings or internal meetings or in Slack. And
Hmm.
proactive would be time I spend just thinking and strategizing, time I spend learning, that kind of thing. And like creating a plan for engaging a customer or a QBR or something like that. And I would like to not get too much lost in reactive work.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I need to think about how I can do that more myself. What's the name of the tool that you mentioned? Could you spell
Sunsama.
it?
I've been using Sunsama for bajillion years now. I am obsessed. It just like it's a time tracker, but also has a Pomodoro timer, and the team is really wonderful. Shout out to Ashutosh, who's one of the founders who like onboarded me a bajillion years ago. It's a great, really great tool. I love it.
Is that Sunsama?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there wants to Google it and
It's
check it out,
amazing. They're doing a
uh,
deal now where if I mention it on LinkedIn, I get like a entry into a raffle. I wonder if this counts. Like if I mention it on a
mm.
podcast, does that count? Probably not. I probably have to send them a link to something. Uh,
So we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present, some of the things you've got going on day to day. I want to ask you a little bit your thoughts on the future. What do you see changing and not changing in 2026 in the CX space?
I don't think the AI bubble is going to burst in 26. I know that's kind of everybody's talking about. Is AI a bubble? Is it not a bubble? I don't think we're at the point where AI companies are going to get their comeuppance yet. I think I could be wrong. But I think there's more runway there. There's more that, like, I mean, we've all heard stories of companies who say they have an AI feature, and it's actually just a bunch of people behind the scenes who are in India or somewhere where they are able to be paid very cheaply, and they're just kind of doing the answers. Like,
Hmm.
I think we're at the point where that's not so much a thing, where genuinely there are like tools are genuinely using machine learning LLMs to do things. But I think we're going to see people get even more and more into it. The video capability and image creation, more so video creation capability, I think is going to get better to the point that it will be indistinguishable. And I mean, there are a lot of folks who can't distinguish it now, I think a lot of short form video on TikTok and YouTube are and Instagram, a lot of that is going to be more and more AI created. I I think my guess is in 27 we'll see that kind of burst, and people will get sick of it and stop trusting. I think in 26 it'll become more and more and more prevalent. There'll be more AI bots in customer support tools, right? Like every time you reach out to customer support as a consumer, you'll probably get a bot. I think every time you interact with anything, you go in a store and you buy a tin of cookies, that wrapper is going to be AI generated art, right? And then I think it's going to become such a saturation point that people are going to start to really value. We'll start calling things that are made by people words like artisanal and bespoke, and like kind of return to that. Anything that's not AI generated will start to feel handmade and then start to have more value. But I don't think we're going to hit that in 26. I think we're headed for more AI excitement and madness.
Yeah, I'm gonna out myself as an AI bull over
Yeah.
here and just say that I think that we are at the beginning of electrification.
Oh, interesting.
It's on the scale of electricity. It is gonna be. I agree with you. It's gonna be everywhere. But I think that if you imagine like, we had lamps that were gas, and the world got dark at night, and you rode your horse to the market, and all these sorts of things, and like today we look at horses and we're like, oh, like you must be a rich person with a fancy hobby.
Mhm.
It's like it's very, I think it's at that scale. And I this is not to say that I think AI is just wonderful and it's always good. Of course not. There's like, I hate AI slop as much as anybody else. I do feel like it's still very early. I mean, the scope and scale of this is on the scale of electricity. It's going to take a decade to fully be mature and to fully be at its
Mm,
extent, right?
mhm.
Um, and so we're just a couple of years in. I mean, we're just it's the baby steps basically. And there's going to be some AI that's terrible, and there's going to be some AI that's wonderful. And I do agree with you that the human touch, human connection, handmade, are it's going to, by contrast, it's going to stand out and become even more valuable. And I hope that's an opportunity in CX as well.
Potentially like the horse that you mentioned, like, oh, you make your own Instagram videos, you must be a rich person or something. Yeah, I think it remains.
Well, yeah, but it feels valuable too,
Mhm.
right? As a customer, like if I get a human that I can relate to and have a relationship with, it feels valuable, that human connection. And so, you know, if I value that as a customer, then I'm going to value your business highly. You know,
Yeah.
I'm going to stick around longer. Like there's a
Yeah.
merit there that stands on its
But I think
own.
it's going to become harder to prove. Even
Mm.
before this AI boom, I would occasionally get customers chatting in to me and saying, "Well, you sound like a robot. Like, are you just a bot?" And I think like, and as you were talking, I was thinking, well, I wonder if video support will become even more like, would I prove that I'm a real human specialist by being on video? But I've already seen AI videos of people I know that look somewhat convincing. And so within the next couple of
Hmm.
years, that could, how? Like how, other than being in person, will we even prove that we're human support people, right?
I mean, it's a good
Yeah.
point. It's a good point. I think, and skepticism is on the rise for good reason. I think video, the AI video stuff that I've seen is more and more convincing. But I do think that if you're on the borderline where people can't tell if what you're doing is AI, then you might have gotten a little too corporate. You might have gotten a little too, cookie cutter or whatever you want to call it. But I think that there are always going to be some things that you can do that, that demonstrate authenticity.
I mean, for sure in my field, when I answer a customer's support question, oftentimes I've been in a video call with them answering their complex questions and working through things. And so it's pretty
Hmm.
clear that I'm a human in that
Right.
context. Maybe relationships are what make humans stand out in that way.
Yeah, I think so. I wanted to ask one more question here before we close out the
Sure.
episode. There's a lot of conversation about okay, automating things with AI. You do the self-service piece, um, and then you get more time back, or you have less pressure on the existing staff that you have. What do you think about the reallocation that enables, and like some of these ideas about more human interaction, focusing on more valuable strategic conversations? How do you see like
Mm.
the opportunity that it creates to not do the tedious stuff? You don't have to plow your field by hand anymore. Now you have a tractor.
I think it will enable customer support teams to be more like customer success teams. Like I know a support team for a B2C product who has been looking at onboarding calls for a subset of their new customers. And this is not a very expensive product, right? We do onboarding calls for our customers, but it is a more expensive, more intense product. But I think that would allow teams of the same size to offer more to their customers, like custom onboarding calls, right? Especially for complex products where getting somebody before they go, I don't even get this, and close the app and never use it again, right? For example.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I, I think unfortunately we're going to see a lot of executives abuse that freedom and just not hire more people or fire people, as we've already seen, right? I think on smart teams are redirecting a lot of those support specialists or other customer people to be AI babysitters. If you're scaling, if you're growing, and AI LLMs are answering a lot of your customers, you've got to have somebody in there deciding was that a good answer? And if not, how do we make the next one a good answer? That's a whole job in itself. That's pretty cool. And I think a lot of people are interested in. We need to be allowing people to specialize in that and in knowledge management, right? Like freeing up people to make the knowledge bases that AI is basing its answers on much better and more accurate and tailored in ways we probably don't even yet realize that we need.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the tier one support specialist job title position is going to increasingly go away, but that
Mhm,
doesn't mean that the humans go away.
mhm,
I think that there's an opportunity there, like with all new technology that comes out, there's an opportunity to take advantage of it instead of being a victim of it.
mhm.
It's not perfect, and I know some people are going to be, fired or whatever, but I think that if you lean into it and you take advantage of it, you could go from support specialist tier one to knowledge operations specialist, knowledge engineer, knowledge application specialist. Like this is the shift, and I think the trend is only going to accelerate. So if people start to think about, okay, how do I play with this instead of being, um, played with by it,
Yeah.
that then you can open up some
I
opportunity.
think the problem there is going to be, if you have someone who's specialized in support or a senior
Hmm.
support specialist, where do those people come from? They come from baby junior support specialists. If we don't hire those anymore, if we don't have those anymore, how are we taking people from nothing to senior or nothing to specialized?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's
Yeah.
an opportunity for some AI tools that pretend to be customers with tier one issues because the customers with tier one issues are talking to AI bots, right? And maybe we train people on those.
Well, maybe it's an opportunity for on-ramp, you know? You speed run people from nothing to, mid-level with an advanced onboarding. I don't
Potentially.
know. Just
Mm,
just
yeah.
brainstorming
Yeah.
here. All right. Well, Jen, I think we've probably gone on long enough for today. It was wonderful to talk with you. Jen Weaver, everybody. If you want to connect with her, it's Jen Weaver, as you imagine to spell it, on LinkedIn. She has her own podcast, and she collects and rounds up podcasts as well in the CX space. So give her a follow on LinkedIn and say hello.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll
This has
catch
been
you.
super fun.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And we'll see you next time on the CX Files. Bye.